As saffron-robed dawn rose from the river of ocean to bring daylight to the immortals and to men, Thetis reached the Greek ships with the gods' gifts in her hands. She found her son Achilles prostrate, with his arms around Patroclus. He was weeping bitterly, and many of his men stood round him lamenting. The celestial goddess went up to them and, putting her hand in her son's, said, "My child, the man who lies here was struck down by the will of the gods. For all your grief, let him be now, and take this impressive armour I have brought you from Hephaestus. It is utterly magnificent. No mortal has ever worn anything like it." With these words, the goddess laid the intricately worked armour before Achilles. It rang out loud, and all the Myrmidons shook with fear. They could not endure to look at it, and backed away. But the more Achilles looked, the deeper his anger against Hector grew, and from beneath their lids his eyes shone fearfully like flames. He picked up the god's splendid gifts and handled them with delight. When he had taken in all their intricate work, he spoke to his mother with winged words. "Mother, this armour of the gods, this is indeed the workmanship we might expect from the immortals. No human could have made it, so now I will arm for battle. But I am terribly afraid that in the meantime flies will defile the body of brave Patroclus by settling on the open wounds and breeding worms in them. Life has gone out of him, and all his flesh may rot." The goddess, silver-footed Thetis, replied, "My child, have no worries about any of this. I shall arrange to keep off those pests, the flies that devour the bodies of men killed in battle. Patroclus could lie here for a whole year, and still his flesh would be preserved. Indeed, it might be better than now. But go and summon the Greek warriors to assembly, renounce your anger against Agamemnon, shepherd of the people, and then immediately arm for battle and clothe yourself in valour." With these words, she breathed supreme confidence into her son, and, to save Patroclus from decay, she treated his body with ambrosia and red nectar, which she dripped through his nostrils. Meanwhile, godlike Achilles went along the beach, shouting at the top of his voice to call out the Greek warriors. As a result, even the men who usually stayed with the ships, the helmsman in charge of the steering oars and the onboard stewards who dealt out provisions, came to the assembly, now that Achilles had reappeared after his long absence from war and its agonies. The two attendants of Ares, resolute Diomedes and godlike Odysseus, came limping in, still troubled by their wounds, and leaning on their spears. They came and sat down in the front of the assembly, and last of all came Agamemnon, lord of men. He too was suffering from the wound that Coon, son of Antenor, had given him with his bronze-headed spear in the thick of the action. When all the Greeks were gathered together, swift-footed Achilles stood up and spoke to them. "Agamemnon, son of Atreus, has it proved a good thing, either for you or me, to keep up this soul-destroying rivalry about a girl, which has brought us such anguish? I only wish Artemis had killed her with an arrow on board ship that day I won her when I sacked Lyrnessus. Fewer Greeks would then have bitten the dust of the broad earth, slaughtered by the enemy, while I sat apart in my implacable fury. I mean, you could have just got up and gone to fight, but sure, blame the girl. It was only Hector and the Trojans who profited by our quarrel. The Greeks, I think, will have cause to remember it for many a long day. But however much it still rankles, it is now over and done with. let it go. We must master our pride. We have no choice. So I now renounce my anger. There is no need for me to nurse it any longer, but come, summon the long-haired Greeks to battle immediately, so that if the Trojans insist on camping out by our ships, I can pit myself against them once more. I reckon that any Trojan who dodges my spear and comes out of this battle alive will be only too glad to rest his weary limbs." So he spoke, and the Greek men-at-arms shouted for joy when they heard the great-hearted son of Peleus disclaim his anger. Agamemnon, lord of men, then addressed them from his seat, rather than rising and speaking from the centre. "Friends, Greek warriors, attendants of Ares, when a man stands to speak as Achilles has just done, it is only courteous to give him a hearing and not interrupt, which even the experienced orator finds hard to cope with. How can anyone talk or hear when everyone is making an uproar to drown out the shrillest speaker? Now I am going to clarify my position to Achilles, in particular, but all the rest of you pay attention and take in what I say. The Greeks have often insulted me, making the very point with which the last speech began. But I was not to blame. It was Zeus and destiny and the fury that walks in darkness that blinded my judgment that day at the assembly when I took Achilles' prize for myself. What could I do? At such moments a god takes complete command. Delusion, eldest daughter of Zeus, who blinds us all, damn her! She never touches the ground with those soft feet of hers, but flits over men's heads, corrupting them and shackling one man after another. I mean, you could just say sorry. Why, even Zeus was blinded by her once, and they say he is the best of all men and gods. Hera and her feminine wiles tricked him on the day when Alcmene was going to give birth to mighty Heracles in Thebes with its crown of battlements. Zeus boasted to all the gods, "Listen to me, all you gods and goddesses, so that I can tell you what I feel compelled to say. This day, Aletheia, goddess of labour, will bring into the light a baby born of a family with my blood in their veins, who will have dominion over all his neighbours." The lady Hera set a trap for Zeus and said, "That's a lie, as time will show, a prophecy that you will not fulfill. Come now, Olympian, swear me a solemn oath that the child delivered by the woman between her feet this day, who comes of a family with your blood in its veins, shall indeed have dominion over all his neighbours." So she spoke, and Zeus saw no trickery in this and swore a great oath. In doing so, he was completely deluded. Hera swooped down from the summit of Olympus and hurried to Argos in Achaea, where, as she knew, the noble wife of Sthenelus, son of Perseus, also had a baby on its way. But was only 7 months gone. Hera brought this child into the light of day prematurely and postponed Alcmene's delivery by restraining the goddesses of childbirth. Then she went to Zeus and personally gave him the news. "Father Zeus, lord of the vivid lightning, just to let you know, a noble child has been born today, who is to have dominion over the Greeks. They have called him Eurystheus, and his father Sthenelus, son of Perseus, of your family. So it is no disgrace for him to have dominion over the Greeks." So she spoke, and it was a bitter blow to Zeus and stung him very badly. In his rage he seized Delusion by her glossy hair, and swearing a mighty oath that this goddess who blinds everyone should never set foot in Olympus and the starry sky again, he whirled her round his head and hurled her down from the starry skies. Delusion quickly found herself in the world of men. But Zeus could not think of her without a groan when he saw Heracles, his own beloved son, labouring away at the humiliating tasks set him by Eurystheus. It was the same with me, when great Hector of the flashing helmet was once more slaughtering Greeks at the sterns of the ships. I could not forget delusion who blinded me that day. But since I was blinded, and Zeus robbed me of my wits, I am willing to make amends and grant immense compensation. So prepare yourself for battle, and give a lead to the rest of the army. As for the gifts, I am ready to produce all that godlike Odysseus promised when he went to you yesterday in your hut. Or, if you like, restrain your desire for battle for a while, and my attendants will fetch your gifts from my ship, so that you will be able to see I am giving you the very best. Swift-footed Achilles replied and said, Most glorious son of Atreus, Agamemnon, lord of men, it is up to you if you want to produce the gifts, as would be right, or keep them. But now let us call up our old will to fight immediately. There is serious work to be done. We ought not to stay here chatting away and wasting time, as each of you sees Achilles in the front line once again destroying Trojan ranks with his bronze spear. So let him keep that image in his mind as he fights the enemy. Quick-thinking Odysseus replied and said, You are a great warrior, godlike Achilles, but you must not order the men to march against Ilium and take on the enemy without having eaten something first. The battle will not soon be over, once the two forces are engaged and the god has breathed fire into them. Tell the men rather to take some food and wine by the ships. Their courage and stamina depend on it. It's impossible for a man to stand up to the enemy all day long, till sunset, without food. His heart may be set on fighting, but exhaustion takes him unawares, hunger and thirst set in, and his legs give way under him. But when a man has had his fill of wine and food before an all-day battle, his spirit is up, his strength doesn't flag till the fight is broken off. So dismiss the troops and tell them to prepare a meal. As for the gifts, let Lord Agamemnon bring them into the middle of the assembly so that everyone can see them for themselves and you can be satisfied. Further, let him stand up before the whole army and swear on oath that he has never been in the girl's bed and slept with her. In return, Achilles, you must show a gracious and forgiving spirit. Then let Agamemnon make it up to you with a rich feast in his hut, so that you will not feel you have been sold short. Agamemnon, you will be more ready in the future to give others their due. It is no disgrace for a ruler to make up in full for trouble he has begun. Agamemnon, lord of men, said, Odysseus, son of Laertes, I am delighted to have heard your views. Nothing was missing. You dealt properly with every point. I am not only ready but anxious to take the oath you suggest, and I will not swear falsely in the sight of the god. But meanwhile let Achilles wait here, though he is eager for action. And all the rest of you remain in your places too, till the gifts are brought from my hut and we can make a pact on oath. You yourself, Odysseus, are the man I entrust with this task. Pick out some young men, the best you can find in the whole force, go to my ship and fetch all the gifts we promised Achilles yesterday, and bring the women too. And let Talthybius get a boar ready for me at once to sacrifice to Zeus and the sun in the presence of this whole great army. Swift-footed Achilles replied and said, Most glorious son of Atreus, Agamemnon, lord of men, you ought to be taking these steps at some other time, when there is a lull in the fighting and my blood is not up as it is now. But our men who fell to Hector when Zeus gave him the glory are still lying mangled on the plain. and you and Odysseus are urging us to eat. I would make the men fight now, fasting and hungry, and then prepare a huge meal for them at sunset after we have avenged the insult done to us. Till that's done, no food or drink will pass my lips, with my companion lying dead in my hut, pierced by the sharp bronze spear, his feet lying toward the door, and his comrades weeping about him. None of your proposal interests me, only slaughter and bloodshed and the groans of the dying. Quick-thinking Odysseus replied and said, Achilles, son of Peleus, greatest of the Greeks, you are a stronger man than I, and not a little better with the spear, but in view of my greater age and experience, my judgment is much sounder than yours. That being so, prepare yourself for what I am about to say. Men have soon had enough of pitched battle. Their weapons may scatter heaps of dead over the ground like straw, but after Zeus, controller of war on earth, has tipped the scales to decide who wins, the resulting reward for their risk is small. You wish the troops to express their grief at a man's death by fasting. That is impossible. Day after day, one after the other, men fall in their hundreds. Would we ever find rest from struggle and suffering? No. We must steel our hearts, bury our dead, and let one day's tears suffice. All those who have survived the carnage must now turn their thoughts to food and drink, so that we can carry on the struggle without let-up to the bitter end, with our bronze armour that never tires on our backs. So let none of you hold back and wait for any second call to action. This is the summons. There will be trouble for anyone left behind at the ships. The whole army must advance together and unleash the dogs of war against those horse-taming Trojans. He spoke, and chose to help him illustrious Nestor's sons, with Meges, Thoas, Meriones, Lycomedes, and Melanippus, and they set out for Agamemnon's hut. Once there, no sooner said than done, they fetched out from his quarters the 7 tripods he had promised Achilles, the 20 cauldrons of gleaming copper, and the 12 horses, and immediately after the 7 women skilled in arts and crafts, fair-cheeked Briseis making the 8th. Then Odysseus, who had weighed out 10 talents of gold, led the way back, followed by the other young Greeks carrying the gifts. They laid them down in the middle of the assembly, and Agamemnon rose to his feet. Beside him stood Talthybius, whose voice was like a god's, holding a boar in his arms. Agamemnon drew out the knife that hung by the great scabbard of his sword, and made the first offering by cutting a little hair from the boar's head, and lifting up his hands in prayer to Zeus, while the Greeks all sat quietly in their own places, in the proper way, listening to their leader. He looked up into the broad skies and prayed, I call on Zeus, highest and best of the gods, and then on the earth and sun and the Furies who punish men for perjury in the world below, to be my witnesses that I never laid hands on the girl Briseis to bring her to my bed, or for any other purpose. She stayed in my hut unmolested. If a word of this is false, may the gods inflict on me all the sufferings that they impose on those who take their names in vain. He spoke and cut the boar's throat with the relentless bronze. Talthybius took the carcass, and with a swing flung it out over the broad expanse of the grey sea for the fish to eat. Then Achilles rose to address the war-loving Greeks. Father Zeus, what tremendous delusions you inflict on men! Agamemnon would never have provoked me to such lasting bitterness, nor stubbornly taken a girl against my will, if Zeus had not wanted a Greek massacre. But go now. Take your meal, and then to battle. He spoke and quickly dismissed the assembly. They scattered to their several ships, and the Myrmidons took charge of the gifts and carried them off to godlike Achilles' ship, where they placed them in his hut and sat the women down. The horses were driven in among his own herd by his noble attendants. But when Briseis, who looked like golden Aphrodite, saw Patroclus lying there, mangled by the sharp bronze spear, she gave a piercing scream, threw herself on his body, and tore with her hands at her breast and tender neck and fair cheeks. Lovely as the goddesses, she spoke in tears. "O Patroclus, my heart's delight! O my misery! I left you in this hut alive when I went away, and now I have come back, commander of men, to find you dead. Such is my life, an endless chain of disaster. I saw the husband to whom my father and my lady mother gave me mangled in front of his town by the cruel spear, and I saw my 3 brothers, my dear brothers, born by the same mother as myself, all meet their doom. But you, when swift-footed Achilles killed my husband and sacked Lord Mynes' town, you would not even let me weep. You said you would make me Achilles' lawful wife and take me in your ships to your home in Phthia, and give me a wedding feast among the Myrmidons. You were always so gentle with me, so in death I mourn you inconsolably." So she spoke in tears, and the other women took up the cry, each one recalling through Patroclus her own misfortunes. As for Achilles, the Greek chieftains gathered round and entreated him to take food, but he refused with a groan. "If you have any regard for my wishes, I entreat you, don't ask me to satisfy my thirst and hunger now. My grief is too dreadful. I intend to hold out at all costs till sunrise." With these words he dismissed the rest. But Agamemnon and Menelaus stayed, and so did godlike Odysseus, Nestor, Idomeneus, and Phoenix the old charioteer. They tried to comfort him in his anguish, but his heart would find no comfort till he hurled himself into the jaws of bloody battle. Memories came crowding round, and with many a sigh he said, "How often you yourself, my most unhappy and beloved companion, have set a delicious meal before me in this hut, with speed and skill, when the Greeks were set to bring war with all its tears on the horse-taming Trojans. As it is, you lie mangled here, and my heart rejects all thought of food. Not that I lack it, I lack you. I could have suffered no crueler blow than this, not even the news of my father Peleus' death, who is no doubt shedding soft tears in Phthia at this moment for me, the dear son he has lost, while I am fighting Trojans in a foreign land for wretched Helen's sake. Nor even if they told me my own son, godlike Neoptolemus, was dead, who is growing up in Skyros, if he is still alive anywhere. And yet I liked to think that I alone would perish here in Troy, far from Thessaly, where the horses graze, and that you, Patroclus, would get home to Phthia and be able to fetch my son from Skyros in a fast black ship, and show him everything, my possessions and slaves and great high-roofed palace. Now surely Peleus, if he is not dead and gone by now, is only half alive, crushed by the burden of old age and in daily expectation of the dreadful news that I myself am dead." So Achilles spoke in tears, and the leaders took up the cry, each of them remembering what he had left at home. Zeus, son of Cronus, took pity on them when he saw their grief, and immediately spoke to Athene with winged words. "My child, you have deserted your favourite. Is there then no longer any room in your heart for Achilles, who is sitting there in front of his high-beaked ships, mourning for his dear companion and fasting, refusing to touch a thing, while all the rest have gone to eat? Go and distill some nectar and lovely ambrosia into his chest to save him from starvation." With these words he spurred on Athene, who had already set her heart on action. She swooped down from the skies through the upper air like a shrieking long-winged seabird. While the Greeks were arming themselves through the camp, she distilled nectar and lovely ambrosia into Achilles' chest to preserve him from the pangs of hunger. This done, she made her way back to her almighty father's palace as the troops poured out among the swift ships, like cold snowflakes teeming thickly down from the sky before the onset of a clear-born northerly gale. So thickly did the shining helmets, bossed shields, plated armour, and ash spears emerge from the ships. Brightness lit up the sky. The whole earth round about laughed at the glitter of bronze, and the land resounded to the thunder of marching feet. In the middle of all this, god-like Achilles armed for battle. He ground his teeth, his eyes blazed like flames of fire, and unendurable grief consumed him as he put on the divine gifts that Hephaestus had made for him, raging against the Trojans. First he placed fine leg guards on his shins, fitted with silver ankle clips. Then he put on his body armour and slung his bronze, silver-riveted sword over his shoulder. Then he took up the great, heavy shield, whose brightness flashed into the distance like the moon's, like the gleam that sailors catch at sea from a fire burning on a lonely upland farm, when the winds drive them unwillingly from home over the teeming seas. Such was the gleam that went up into the sky from Achilles' ornamented shield. Next he picked up his massive helmet and placed it on his head. It sparkled like a star, and above it danced the golden plumes that Hephaestus had lavished on the crest. God-like Achilles tried himself in the armour to see if it fitted, and allowed his splendid limbs free movement. It was like a pair of wings to this shepherd of the people, and lifted him up. Finally, he took his father's spear from its case, long, thick, and heavy. No Greek could wield this but Achilles, who alone knew how to handle it. It was made from an ash tree on the top of Mount Pelion, and had been a gift from Chiron to Achilles' father Peleus, to bring death to warriors. Meanwhile, Automedon and Alcimedon were busy seeing to the yoking of the horses. They fitted the yoke straps round their chests, put the bits in their mouths, and drew the reins back into the chariot. Then Automedon picked up a shining whip that fitted his grip and leapt in behind the pair. Achilles, armed for battle, followed him in, resplendent in his armour, like the shining sun, and called to his father's horses in a terrible voice. "Xanthus and Balius, Podarge's legendary foals, try this time to think more carefully about bringing your charioteer back to his friends alive when the fighting is done, instead of leaving him dead on the battlefield as you left Patroclus." "Don't blame the horses." From under the yoke, flashing-footed Xanthus replied. He had lowered his head, so his mane came tumbling down from the yoke pad and swept the ground. The goddess, white-armed Hera, had endowed him with human speech. "Indeed, imperious Achilles, we will once more bring you safely home today. But the day of your death is drawing near, and it is not we who will be the cause of it, but a great God and inexorable destiny. Nor was it by our laziness or lack of speed that the Trojans were enabled to strip the armour from Patroclus' shoulders. It was the best of the gods, Apollo, son of lovely-haired Leto, who killed him in the front line and let Hector have the glory. We could run with the speed of the west wind, and they say nothing is faster, but you are still destined to fall in battle at the hands of a god and of a man. As he spoke, the Furies struck him dumb. Angrily, swift-footed Achilles replied, "Xanthus, why prophesy my death? There is no need. I know well enough I am destined to perish here, far from my dear father and mother. But I am still not going to stop till I have given the Trojans their fill of battle." He spoke, raised the battle cry among the leaders, and drove his powerful horses forward.